That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, let's go through and let's talk about these running back rankings. And this week's always a little weird because this week, of course, we have the games on Thanksgiving. So you're going to be watching this video and you're probably going to see a decent amount of running backs that have already played. So what y'all can do is, of course, go down to the comment section, laugh at me for how we probably got some things on Thursday horribly wrong. Nonetheless, we're going to go through, we're going to do our best to rank all of the top 24 running backs this week. We got a lot of moving parts here, but before we get into anything, of course, go down there, drop that like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. Every time you drop that like on a video and leave a comment, you get entered in to win a free Fantasy Flock Network hat. We have to give away a couple of those hats here. Y'all know the deal. This is going to come out from Aaron and Dead Meme. Thank y'all so much for being a part of the flock and supporting the channel. And if y'all really want to support the channel, the number one thing that you can do is go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. When you sign up for Underdog Fantasy and you use promo code FLOCK, they will match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. They have a ton of cool drafts that you can get in on Underdog Fantasy. They have a ton of player props over there as well. And those drafts are just going to be weekly. So if you want to go draft a team just for Thursday, you want to go draft a team for just week 12, of course, you can go do that over on Underdog, available in damn near every single state. And that should be it. Let's go through. Let's dive into these running backs. Leading it off at our running back 1 spot. I disrespected the man last week for not having him at running back 1. We had him at running back 3 because of the, oh my gosh, tough matchup. Who the hell cares? Jonathan Taylor has to be the running back 1 every single week. Maybe you make an argument, well, Mason, Christian McCaffrey has a great matchup against the Miami Dolphins. Jonathan Taylor has a horrible matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We know the Bucs have one of, if not the best run defenses in the entire NFL. Well, what I say to that is show the man his respect. He just came out against the Buffalo Bills, previously one of the toughest run defenses in the NFL. He made them look like children with 32 rush attempts, 185 rushing yards, 5 total touchdowns this week. He has had 15 touchdowns so far this season. I mean, all of those were within the last 8 weeks here. He's averaging almost 2 touchdowns a game. So maybe you want to make the argument it has to be Christian McCaffrey. I told y'all at the beginning of the week, if I ever rank a different running back at running back 1 outside of Jonathan Taylor, your job is to go down there and hit that subscribe button, even though I know everybody subscribes. So what that would do for you is it would unsubscribe you from the channel. And that's what you should do if I do not have Jonathan Taylor ever at our running back 1 spot again, simply out of respect for the man. Let's go over to our running back 2, going to be in the same tier. We'll throw Christian McCaffrey in here. And with Christian McCaffrey, I mean, he comes back this past week. And I mean, honestly, I think that you saw something very similar to what you should have expected coming in. We saw Cam Newton take away some value in the red zone. You saw Christian McCaffrey still be a top 3 running back in fantasy. But like we said previously, sadly, he is not going to be able to get to the 29, 28, 30 points per game that you had back in 2019, back in the super special Christian McCaffrey year. So usually how you would have it with vintage Christian McCaffrey is he's in his completely own tier, and then they're going to be just starting us off at running back 2 every single week. Well, that's not really going to be the case. You do have Cam Newton taking away a rushing touchdown this past week. That's probably something that we're going to have to get a little used to here. Great matchup against the Miami Dolphins. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey still a top 3 running back. We're more so splitting hairs, saying, okay, well, maybe McCaffrey isn't scoring 29 points per game. Maybe instead he's down there at 23, 24 points per game, which is a pretty big difference, I will say. And it doesn't really matter with the receiving role that he had in Carolina this past week. He gets 60 receiving yards, 7 receptions, and the receiving touchdown at the same time. So Christian McCaffrey, top 3 running back, play him against Miami. And honestly, let's go down a tier. And I know a lot of people are going to hate to hear this, but I think we're going to have Austin Ekeler at running back 3 in the second tier. I'm unsure if you can put him in the same tier as Christian McCaffrey or Jonathan Taylor right now. Now, trust me, I get it. Y'all know I loved Austin Ekeler coming into the season, because what do we talk about with our running backs? You need the usage in the red zone as well as the usage as a receiver out of the backfield if you want to find that elite level upside at the running back position. Well, Austin Ekeler has just that. I mean, he's had 58 targets so far this year, and at the same time, he's had 13 touchdowns. I mean, this is what we talked about when we were saying buy low on him a week ago after he was coming off 2 games with 11 and 14 fantasy points, and Larry Roundtree stole the goal line rushing touchdown. We were saying that's not something we should expect going forward. Austin Ekeler is still that elite level running back. Go pay whatever you can for him. He drops 41 points against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I will say it's a little bit of a tougher matchup against the Denver Broncos. I don't necessarily think that this touchdown rate can keep up for Austin Eckler. Maybe this is a spot where this team regresses just slightly. We've seen Denver have a pretty good defense in some spots this season so far. I mean, shutting down the Dallas Cowboys just 2 weeks ago, even with a fully healthy Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. So yeah, I think that we're probably going to have Austin Eckler at 3. Still a great option, but our running back 4 in this same tier will be Najee Harris. Now with Harris this past week, I actually had him as our running back 1, embarrassingly, against the Los Angeles Chargers, just looking at that Chargers defense, saying, hell, they have one of the worst defenses in the NFL against the rush. And at the same time, with Najee Harris, what do we want? We want the usage in the receiving game as well as the usage in the red zone. You get the rushing touchdown this past week. You get 6 targets out of the backfield. The issue is with Najee Harris, he misses a couple of crucial drives where you'd imagine that he would have got some key checkdowns and maybe picked up an additional 30, 40 receiving yards and a couple extra receptions. Maybe he would have been able to find his way in the end zone. So he only came away with 17 fantasy points this past week, but nonetheless, he's been a running back that's had an incredibly high floor with his workload so far this season. And there should be a game going up against the Cincinnati Bengals that it's going to be a close in-division game. Let me go through and look up the spread right now on what we have for the Cincinnati Bengals and Pittsburgh Steelers matchup. Here you have the Cincinnati Bengals favored by 4 points. That's kind of the game flow you're looking for Najee Harris. You want him to be down about a touchdown. You want this team to be throwing the ball and obviously having some trips to the red zone. And our next running back in the second tier will be Dalvin Cook. Not a great matchup against the San Francisco 49ers, who have looked fantastic. And I mean, this past week, it was a pretty tough matchup against the Green Bay Packers, where we know that defense was extremely hot going into the week. Yeah, Dalvin Cook, we've consistently said that nothing has changed. Dalvin Cook is still that top 5 running back. He still has an elite level workload. You see this past week, 22 carries against the Packers. He also has 4 targets out of the backfield. So I'm not moving Dalvin Cook down at all in our rankings. I think he's going to be in this tier damn near every single week. Of course, it's a tough defense to go up against, but honestly, the 49ers have had a better pass defense so far this year than rush defense. So maybe if the Minnesota Vikings can somehow get ahead in this game and look to run the ball a little bit more, it could be a good game flow for Dalvin Cook. And right now, it's supposed to be a close game. Right now, you have the 49ers favored by 3 points at home. Now, let's go down a tier to our running back 6, and let's go to A.J. Dillon. With A.J. Dillon, I mean, we actually made some money betting against A.J. Dillon on Underdog Fantasy. This past week, they actually had A.J. Dillon favored to have more total yards than Dalvin Cook, which I didn't agree with, so we obviously took Dalvin Cook like plus 3 yards there. But Dillon came out. He showed us that he is going to be that bell cow level running back when you don't have Aaron Jones in this backfield. A.J. Dillon handled pretty much every single touch out of the backfield. And this was a game that you didn't really expect the Green Bay Packers to have to completely abandon the run and look to catch up on the Minnesota Vikings. Yeah, that's what happened here. So you only had 11 carries for A.J. Dillon, but you did have 6 targets out of the backfield. We know this is a running back that, considering the fact that he is 6'1" and 250 pounds, he is a monstrous human that once they get to the red zone, he will have that touchdown upside. You see this in week 10 whenever he took over for Aaron Jones at the beginning of that game, and he had 2 rushing touchdowns and 21 carries. So yeah, I think A.J. Dillon, he's going to be a mid running back 1. Now, if you're a contending team and your trade deadline is going to come up and we've already locked up a fantasy football playoff spot, I probably would be looking to sell A.J. Dillon a little bit high, but that's more so just because you will get Aaron Jones back at the end of the season. And now going over to our next running back, this will be our running back 7, DAndre Swift. Now with DAndre Swift, to be completely honest, I don't know if we are getting Jared Goff back at this time. I am recording this the 23rd this morning. Now, if we have Jared Goff back in, obviously you're going to be a lot more excited about DAndre Swift. Yesterday on Monday, Jared Goff was limited in practice. And real quick, Tim Boyle, oh my gosh. We talked about this last week, but Tim Boyle just has to be the worst thing you're ever going to see in terms of a quarterback at the NFL level. I mean, just hear the name, you kind of know what's up. Now, this is a tough defense to go up against, but what you actually kind of like with DAndre Swift here is you only have the Bears favored by 3 points in this game. This should be one of the closer games the Detroit Lions play, and I actually tweeted this out. Let me pull up the exact stat that we had halfway through this past game. I mean, you saw DAndre Swift coming out and crushing despite this entire offense looking horrible. I mean, at that time, the Detroit Lions in the past 2 games had only had 165 passing yards, where DAndre Swift had 258 rushing yards. Like, what? DAndre Swift, clearly an elite talent, clearly a horrible situation, not a great matchup, but maybe this game's a little bit closer than what you have for most Detroit Lions games. And our last running back in this tier, someone that y'all know we loved coming into the season. Let's go over to Joe Mixon going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. With Joe Mixon, not much to discuss. I mean, this is a running back that y'all know we called him the Ezekiel Elliott of Cincinnati coming into the season. If anything, maybe he has a better workload than Ezekiel Elliott at this point. I mean, this past week he comes out and it's not going to be the same game flow this week, but he did have 30 carries and 123 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. No involvement as a receiving running back, but we've already seen him get there before with 5-6 receptions earlier this season. So, I mean, I think that we honestly can kind of ignore that. Just know that the game flow was one that they didn't have to throw the ball very often at all. That's why you got like 3 receptions for Jamar Chase. So, yeah, Joe Mixon, it's a tough matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. We will have him as a top 10 running back. Now, let's go down a tier in a running back that I think we need to be selling right now. Nick Chubb. I mean, Nick Chubb looks like we may be getting back Kareem Hunt this week. And at the same time, it's going to be a couple brutal games for Nick Chubb here, where he's coming off a great matchup against the Detroit Lions. You expected Nick Chubb to crush. I mean, you expected Nick Chubb to come out and be a top 5 running back every single week that you don't have Kareem Hunt. I mean, against the Bengals a couple weeks ago, came out 30 fantasy points against the Lions, 22. This is kind of the expectation, but with Kareem Hunt coming back in, Kareem Hunt, we know, will take some touches specifically down there in the red zone. And at the same time, he'll take those touches in the receiving game. That's why you don't really like Nick Chubb, even though he's an elite talent at the running back position, running behind an elite offensive line. If Kareem Hunt's able to make it back in, you have to lower your expectations. And at the same time, this is going to be a very tough matchup against the Baltimore Ravens, who right now are top 5 in the NFL against opposing running backs. So yeah, we're going to have Nick Chubb down here in this tier. And now our next running back in the tier will be James Robinson for the Jacksonville Jaguars in a matchup where finally Jacksonville may be playing a close game here. Finally, you may get James Robinson in a competitive contest. They're going up against the Atlanta Falcons. Right now, this game has the Atlanta Falcons favored by 1 point. So it's essentially just a pick 'em. Who do you have between the Falcons and the Jags? With James Robinson another week removed from this heel injury, I think you have to be a little bit more excited about what you will have. And clearly, this is a running back that is going to be that 3-down option for the Jacksonville Jaguars every single week that he is healthy. So yeah, this is honestly maybe a spot where if Kareem Hunt plays, you could possibly move James Robinson up ahead of Nick Chubb to the top of this running back tier. And our last running back here will be Ezekiel Elliott. Now with Ezekiel Elliott, of course, the majority of weeks we have him higher than this. Now the issue is you don't know exactly how healthy Zeke is. I mean, this past week, he gets that injury in the first quarter of that Kansas City Chiefs game. He's able to play through it, which is a little bit surprising here. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we should just go all in on Ezekiel Elliott. Because, I mean, if you were looking at how he played through that injury, he did not look good. And to go on top of this, I mean, we know that they have a more than capable, they have a fantastic backup running back there in Tony Pollard. This is a team with Super Bowl aspirations that essentially has the division on lock. So you wouldn't be surprised if they decide to go through and kind of take it easy with Ezekiel Elliott. So we will have him below these other running backs. And now let's drop it down to our next tier running backs, and let's lead it off with someone that you knew was going to have a horrible game on Monday night. We were saying it all week, even though we liked him in the long term. Saquon Barkley. Now with Saquon Barkley, yes, this past week, he comes out and, I mean, just disappoints against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But the Buccaneers, as we previously discussed, I mean, yes, you have Jonathan Taylor going up against them this week, have the toughest run defense in the NFL. And you just knew that the New York Giants offense were going to get stomped by this Buccaneers defense. It limited Saquon Barkley to 6 carries out of the backfield. I mean, keep in mind, this was a running back that was trailing the entire game. He did get 6 receptions out of the backfield. So you see the receiving role there. I think with Barkley, you're going to see more snaps. You're going to see a more competitive game against the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, the Eagles are hot, but if we're looking at what Vegas is telling us right now, I mean, the Eagles are only favored by 3.5 points against the New York Giants here. So, I mean, you could easily see the Giants winning this game. So I think Saquon Barkley, this is the week to go in. We said not to start him last week. You said you were not starting him the first week that he was back. But now that we have him another week healthy, I think this is the time we can go through and look to start him. And now let's go to our next player, and this is going to be David Montgomery at running back 13 against the Detroit Lions. Now, y'all know I have never been a massive fan of David Montgomery. I mean, we've been very adamant that David Montgomery is not the running back that a lot of people want him to be. But at the same time, he is a running back that's getting 80 to 90% of the snaps in his backfield. To go on with this, with David Montgomery, he has a great matchup against the Detroit Lions. We know that the Chicago Bears in this offense with Justin Fields and Matt Nagy, they're going to be very limited on a week-to-week basis, and the ceiling's going to be capped. Well, this week looks like you're not going to be getting Justin Fields. I will honestly say I don't think Dalton is that large of a downgrade over Justin Fields, even though I know you got a lot of Justin Fields fanboys out there. I think Andy Dalton's going to be just fine for the Cincinnati Bengals offense. The spread on this game right now is going to be favoring the Chicago Bears, which of course you love to see for David Montgomery. So we will have David Montgomery at running back 13. And our running back 14 will be Leonard Fournette. Now with Fournette, I think you could make the argument to put him at the very top of this tier. The reason we're going to have him down here is the usage that we had from Ronald Jones this past week. Ronald Jones actually steals a rushing touchdown away from Leonard Fournette. Now, if you think that this is nothing that we have to be worried about, I'm completely fine. If you want to rank Leonard Fournette a little bit higher than this, I think that just given the great matchups you have for Saquon Barkley and the Philadelphia Eagles and David Montgomery going up against the Detroit Lions, I think that that's why we're going to prefer to go with those two running backs over Leonard Fournette, even though Fournette still has the role in the receiving game. With Leonard Fournette, I mean, he only gave up 8 carries to Ronald Jones this past week, but that was the second most that Ronald Jones has seen this season so far. Now, keep in mind, the game wasn't competitive against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New York Giants, but Ronald Jones scored that touchdown a little bit early in that game. It wasn't just a fourth quarter garbage time touchdown, so I think we have to be a little concerned. Now, going over to our last running back in this tier, we'll have Darrell Henderson in a really tough game against the Green Bay Packers. Now, with no Robert Woods in this offense, you know you've heard every announcer. If you ever turn on a Rams game here, you just hear, oh my gosh, Robert Woods, great run blocker, great leader, great run blocker, great run blocker. I mean, for whatever reason, everybody feels the need to inform you how great of a run blocker that Robert Woods was. Maybe there's something to that, because this past week before the bye, the Los Angeles Rams offense looked very disappointing, and this is going to be a tough game against the Green Bay Packers. Right now, the Packers are actually slight favorites in this game as well. So I think just playing it cautious with Darrell Henderson will be nice at running back 15. Now going down to running back 16, we're going to speed this up a little bit. You got Cordell Patterson in a great matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Hard to rank him any higher than this when we don't know even if he is going to play. I mean, with Cordell Patterson, obviously he missed this past week with the ankle injury, but that game was on Thursday. So just because he missed that Thursday game, I don't necessarily think that's guaranteeing him to miss this next one. I really want to see the practice reports. Right now, we've had no news coming out of Atlanta so far this week, but if he is able to play against the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think you can definitely play Cordell Patterson. Now our next running back, Mark Ingram, running back 17. Y'all know Mark Ingram has been a must-start running back for us the past 2 weeks. Now, I know Jonathan Taylor just dropped 5 touchdowns against this Buffalo Bills team. I still want to say this Bills run defense is going to be one of the better run defenses in the NFL. And if you're actually looking at the spread on this game, I'm surprised to see it's this close. I mean, right now the Buffalo Bills are favored by 5.5. But if you're going to be looking at the over-under, I mean, right now, Vegas is not really projecting the New Orleans Saints to be scoring many points at all. I mean, with that implied team total being so low, I think to avoid Mark Ingram in a tough matchup probably makes a little bit of sense. It's just really going to come down to what are we getting from Alvin Kamara and if Alvin Kamara is going to be able to play. Now, our last running back in this tier will be Elijah Mitchell going up against the Minnesota Vikings. I'm expecting that Elijah Mitchell will play here. I mean, I don't necessarily think that this team had to go out there and risk anything with him this past week. So I don't really want to be too worried about Elijah Mitchell with his health. What I do want to be worried about is the fact that this is a running back that's never going to get used at all in the receiving game. And at the same time, clearly they want to continue to use a committee backfield in San Francisco. So for those reasons, I'm going to be a little bit low on Elijah Mitchell. But at the end of the day, I mean, obviously this is an elite offense. This is an offense that's going to be run first at the same time. Elijah Mitchell looks like a good running back. So I think we can have him at running back 18. Now let's go down to our next tier, guys. Let's lead it off with... I hate to do this. I hate to do it. Do we have to put Antonio Gibson at running back 19? Honestly, no. We're not doing it. Assuming that we have no Jordan Howard here, I'm going to put Miles Sanders at the top of this tier at running back 19. With Miles Sanders, this was a running back that you were buying low on at the beginning of last week before a lot of people realized that he would be coming back. But at this point, I think that he is now someone that you can actually go through and not only have on your roster, but potentially go and start him as well, considering the fact that it looks like you are not going to have Jordan Howard in this game. If you have no Jordan Howard, all of a sudden Miles Sanders becomes a running back that almost is a must start option when we know the Philadelphia Eagles are going to look to be run heavy here against the New York Giants. So you really like having Miles Sanders at running back 19. Then we can go with Antonio Gibson at running back 20. With Gibson, the issue is, you have J.D. McKissic still as the receiving running back in Washington at the same time. Jarrett Patterson's now taking touches out of the backfield. Jarrett Patterson is getting usage here. You're having to lower your expectations on Antonio Gibson, a running back that I definitely think if you could sell now, that's going to be great. Doesn't really matter that he comes out, gets close to, a season high. I actually think he had his season high in rushing yards, but if you're not getting targets out of the backfield, you're just a touchdown or bust player. Now, our last running back this tier will be Josh Jacobs at running back 21. Now, the issue with Josh Jacobs, we've talked about this time and time again, but once you remove Henry Ruggs out of this offense, this team has no ability to stretch the field. As we've always discussed, that's going to be very important from any NFL team to have that speed to keep two safeties back. Now, clearly, you're seeing the loss of Henry Ruggs in this offense where this team just demands no respect at all from opposing defensive coordinators. They're able to stack the box against Josh Jacobs. They're able to go through and shadow Darren Waller at the same time. It's clearly limiting what you have from the Raiders overall. So yeah, I think that you have to be pretty pessimistic on Josh Jacobs right now. So we'll have him at the back end of this list. Now going down to our last grouping of running backs here. Running back 22, we will have Myles Gaskin. With Gaskin, this is a running back that essentially every single week you have no Malcolm Brown, you can start Myles Gaskin. Now, it's a tough matchup against the Carolina Panthers. I definitely want to say that. But with Myles Gaskin, whenever you remove Malcolm Brown from this offense, Gaskin goes from seeing about 7 carries a game to now he's seeing double that per game. He just takes that Malcolm Brown role and he runs with it. Now, it's a really bad offense. It's a really bad matchup at the same time. Now, one thing you could hope for is maybe we get Cam Newton turning the ball over a little bit. Now, the spread on this game currently is going to have the Miami Dolphins as, the obvious underdogs. I don't even need to tell you that, but they're currently going to be looking to lose this game at home by 2 points. I would honestly maybe take Carolina -2 here. Maybe Vegas isn't buying into Cam Newton as much as the fantasy football community, but nonetheless, should be a tough spot for Myles Gaskin. And now our next running back will be Kareem Hunt. And with Kareem Hunt, I'm assuming that he's coming back. And of course, I'm going to be very hesitant to tell anybody to play Kareem Hunt his first week back in because A, we don't know how healthy he's going to be. And B, to go along with this, it's just a brutal matchup against the Baltimore Ravens. So just how you were avoiding to start, Saquon Barkley his first week back in, just like how you were avoiding to start Miles Sanders, Clyde Edwards-Helaire their first weeks back in, I think you need to be doing the same thing with Kareem Hunt. And maybe Kareem Hunt misses. This is a team that does have their bye upcoming, but at the same time, maybe you can just kind of sell yourself on the fact that it's a division game where they really need to go out there and beat the Baltimore Ravens. Now, our last running back that we are going to have on this list will be, you guessed it, Javante Williams. We have to put our guy Javante here. Now, with Javante Williams, he is definitely a running back that is going to be splitting this backfield with Melvin Gordon 50-50. But I want to bet on Javante being the more talented running back. And I would assume that if the Denver Broncos coaching staffs just go through and kind of reevaluate what they have at the running back position through the bye week, maybe they look to get Javante a little bit more involved in the second half. Melvin Gordon had a fumble 6 the week before the bye, so hopefully that does something here. And they have a beautiful matchup against the Los Angeles Chargers. We know the Chargers have a good defense overall, but the run defense is very bad for the Chargers, so maybe Javante can take advantage of that. And of course, thank you all so much for being a part of the flock and supporting the channel. I really hope that you enjoyed this podcast. I really hope you got something from it. Go down there, drop that like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. Every time you do so, you get entered in to win a Fantasy Flock Network hat. And also, go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Check out some of those player props. They're available in every state besides Nevada, Washington State, like Wyoming, Hawaii. Maybe I'm missing one or two. I apologize if I am. And you can get into a draft every state if you want as well. They're doing those weekly drafts. Just use promo code FLOCK. They'll match your first deposit dollar for dollar. Yeah, thank you again. I hope you have a great day, and I hope we see you out in the live stream sometime soon.